Nah, so I was watching this video. Um, Armin said something here.
We can talk.
This is before
Yes,
this.
the flowchart, how you develop the flowchart is driven by the game.
How you develop your flowchart is driven by the game. And I thought this was really interesting because obviously we talk to each other about the game, so there are things that we pick up from each other about our flowchart. But also, if you think about it, if every seed is random and all the drops are random, if every seed is random, and we do all develop our flowcharts by playing the game, then in turn, don't you think those flowcharts are, in that sense, influenced by. They're influenced by the seeds that we've seen before. We. We've seen scenarios. And all the scenarios that I've seen are not the same as the scenarios that Hollow has seen, are not the same as the scenarios that Araman has seen, are not the same as the scenarios that Zar has seen. They are. They're different in a sort of fascinating way. Our flowcharts are different because we have been presented with different scenarios that makes it so that when we approach the same scenario, we have different ideas on how to do it because those ideas are informed by what we know. And what we know is what we've seen before, which in turn seeds random. Um, it's almost interesting in this weird kind of way where, like, there are the obvious aspects of RNG. There's the seeds, which some players put too much focus on. There are the drops, which really fuck you up. There are the zombie spawns, which are disastrous. There is the zombie AI. If the zombie hasn't aggroed on the player, it wanders around and it wanders around randomly. So those are the like obvious aspects of randomness, and then the non-obvious aspect of randomness is is what I've just talked about. Our knowledge and our experience and what we do with that knowledge and experience is based on the seeds that we've seen and the scenarios that we've been put in. And it's so different. It's so different. The seeds that Armin would run are not the same as the seeds that I might or that Hollow Knight might. Or to take it a step further, High would only ever run seeds where the ladder was immediately visible, which is a nice seed to run on, but I know, Araman knows, that's not necessary. Most of the time, all you need is like two trees and enough stone, right? So there's this aspect of it where like the seeds that we run are based on what we know, and then those seeds that we choose to run are going to influence what decisions we end up making later. Like if I drop into Stranded Isle for the first time and I'm trying to speedrun it, this is a seed that no one's ever seen before because it's random. um I'm going to be put in unique scenarios that they might have similarities to stuff that I will do in the future or that other people have seen before, but at the end of the day, they are wholly unique. And so the way that I approach that scenario and the way that I approach the next scenario and so on, those are going to be my intuitive thoughts. That is going to be the way that I intuit the situation as somebody who has not developed a flowchart. And then once I've done that enough, once I've seen enough scenarios, and playing one seed, if you get to the boat, because a lot of the time we reset, but if we play from the start of the game to the boat, you're gonna see dozens, maybe hundreds of unique scenarios, like, and maybe not hundreds of unique scenarios, but certainly hundreds of ways you can approach dozens of scenarios. If you're put into a position where you have like a zombie here, and you've got gems here, and you're mining iron over here, and there's a bunch of sandy area, like you might choose to come over here, mine the gem, and get the zombie, or you might continue like getting the iron. There might be something else down here that you couldn't see because it was off the edge of the screen. Like there are hundreds of ways, or there are dozens of ways that you can approach that single scenario. So if you're put in like 20 of those scenarios in a speedrun, then there are hundreds of different paths you could have taken, which would in turn have led to different scenarios. And early on, that is basically based on RNG. It's based on your gaming experience, how you process playing video games for the first time. You know, if you've played a lot of video games, if you played like resource gathering games like Minecraft and stuff, and if you've speedrun those, in Pcraft, you're going to have a lot of good foundation and ideas to tackle those scenarios and kind of analyze. So you might develop a completely different flowchart to someone whose first game is Pcraft, and they're still getting the ropes of it. But that doesn't mean your flowchart is necessarily going to be better, but it is going to be informed by stuff that you've done in the past. So not only does the game have this intrinsic RNG, there is the extrinsic RNG within you. The way your flowchart is developed, you want to think, oh, it's me, it's my personality or whatever, but really I think there's a huge aspect of it where it is informed by what the game gives you. The game hands you these scenarios from which you can learn and use that information in your next run. Because let's say you pick an option and it doesn't really work out. You're not going to pick that option again. Or maybe you will pick that option again and it won't work out. And maybe you'll pick it a third time and it does work out. And that's how, in your flowchart, Armin and I have talked about this, Paul Knight and I have talked about this, in your flowchart, there will be aspects of it where it's like, this is a risky strategy. Because in the past it hasn't worked, but it also has. And then you've got, oh, I know, like this is the optimal, at least in your mind, this is the optimal thing to do here. I should gather this 7 stones so that I can make a sword and kill that zombie. That is the optimal thing to do in your mind, compared to, well, why don't I gather all of the stone, make all of the tools, and then get the zombie? Because maybe I want to carry my EBM using the trees to go even further in that direction after I've killed the zombie, or something like that. It's hard to describe it without having the game in front of me and showing you a map, but I think that people who run the game will understand what I'm talking about, right? So that's basically, like, this was something that I just thought I had to get my thoughts out there on, because it's so interesting. It's so interesting how, because that's not what Araman was talking about when he said that, but what I took from that was this whole new, like, almost revelation about the game from my perspective. Maybe other people have sort of figured it out already. Maybe Hollow Knight has already realized that your flowchart is influenced by the scenarios the game gives you. But it's just an additional aspect of random to the game Stranded Isle, which is already so random. And I think that's really interesting. Peace out.